to view online now and in the future. We welcome the use of the Welsh language at meetings. I have had no request for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Those attending in the chamber, please be aware that we are all on camera and you may be visible on screen when people around you are speaking. And please remember to speak clearly into your microphones. Committee members participating remotely, can you please refrain from using the chat function and instead use the raised hand icon to indicate when you want to speak. And please remember to keep your microphone muted when you are not talking. Right, we'll move on to the agenda. Agenda item 1, attendance and apologies. Niall, do we have any apologies?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Stuart Ashley and Councillor Chris Tew.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Niall, could you please ask members in alphabetical order to state whether they have any interest to declare?
Yep, Chair. So if we could start with Councillor Best.
I've got no interest to declare, sorry.
Okay, Councillor Evans.
None that I'm aware of, no.
Councillor Gordon.
Yes, Chair. I'm the ward member for Llanffermont-Montier, and the first application relates to my ward.
Okay, Councillor Haller.
Nothing to declare.
Councillor Gaynor-James.
Nothing to declare.
Councillor John James.
Nothing to declare.
Chair.
Nothing to declare, thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Nothing to declare.
Councillor Slade.
Nothing to declare.
And Councillor Williams.
Yes, both a member of Crossy Caelog and Llanrafan Community Council, which both these applications apply to. They were on the consultees, and also as a ward member for item 5 on the agenda.
Perfect, that's everyone, Chair.
Thank you, Niall. Agenda item 3, minutes of the Planning Committee from the 25th of May 2023. Members, could you possibly state whether you have anything to raise in relation to the minutes? If not, I will take them as approved. Can't see any hands going up. So we'll take that as approved. Thank you. Right. Agenda item 4. Planning application 23/P/0177/FUL. New building to accommodate Community Hub Club. Conversion of existing cricket pavilion to changing rooms. Construction of car park and delivery area. Can I ask Simon Pritchard, Assistant Planner, to present the report, please?
Yes, thanks, Chair. So I'll just talk you through our presentation. So 23/P/0177/FUL is for a new building to accommodate a community hub club, conversion of the existing cricket pavilion to changing rooms, construction of the car park and delivery area, sports pavilion, Oaklands, Pontier. So the proposal was accessed off Cullion Road, off of School Close, and I'll just skip through to my slides. So as you can see, they submitted a master plan almost of the whole area, including the existing changing rooms and pavilion, which they're converting to changing rooms, the new clubhouse or community hub club, and then also biodiversity enhancements, as you can see highlighted on the key. So I'll go through those in some more detail now. As you can see, they've also proposed a more formalised car park, as opposed to the more informal car park that's existing. So if I talk you through the block plan, so this grey building is the existing changing rooms and pavilion, and this is to be converted to 4 changing rooms and 2 referee changing rooms with showers for each of the changing facilities. They're also proposing the new Community Hub Club, so this new building here, which is a community hub of modular design with a sedum green roof and solar panels on the roof. They're also proposing solar panels on the container building they use for storage, as well as a bicycle stand, and again 45 parking spaces, 2 of which are for disabled and 2 proposed for electric vehicle charging points as well. So these are the elevational drawings we received. So as you can see, the new Community Hub Club is a modular design contemporary appearance with a wood type effect on the first floor, and then a grey render effect on the ground floor. We've conditioned materials and samples to be conditioned. They've also proposing to change the appearance of the existing pavilion and changing rooms to tie in with the appearance of the new building, as they are with the container as well. So they're using a similar colour throughout the 3 buildings. So as part of the biodiversity enhancements, they're proposing a green sedum roof, but also bat and bird boxes, which you can see on the top drawings there. The layout of the new Community Hub Club is 2 floors of obviously functional spaces, upstairs and downstairs, with a bar, disabled toilets and disabled lift to the first floor. So this is the parking layout that they submitted. So as you can see, they've proposed an access off of School Close to access each of the parking spaces, which then go down beyond the cricket practice nets, which are existing. They're also proposing a delivery coach parking space and bicycle stand, which you can see there. Again, we've conditioned further details of the parking and bicycle stand and a management plan for the car park as well. So this is the biodiversity enhancements. So they're proposing to plant 12 Quercus rubra trees and a buffer here as well. They're also proposing oak saplings along this boundary, as well as the bat and bird boxes, which previously have been referred to. Sorry, I should say there's also a proposed beech hedge around the car park as well. So if I just go back to that screen, you can see the hedge surrounding the car park as well. So these are a few photos of the existing buildings and existing clubhouse. So as you can see, this is the club from School Close, with 2 existing trees which are proposed to be removed. This is a view looking up towards the nursery. And then we've got a view from a property on Station Road looking towards the existing clubhouse and where the proposed Community Hub Club would be. This is a view looking back from the clubhouse over the cricket and sports pitches. So as you can see, the boundary treatment along this property on Station Road and the trees and hedgerows on other properties. This is a view from looking towards the properties on Oaklands and the boundary treatment and the existing parking on School Close. So this is the informal parking area as existing, and the existing container cricket nets and clubhouse with. So they're all the photos. So since the submission of the original report, the applicants were advised that the times on the previous conditions on 14 and 19 was too restrictive in terms of their existing community uses. So they used the building for a coffee morning and an Italian language class. So we'd originally copied the condition, the opening hours, from the design access statement, but we've been advised from the applicant that was referred to the opening times on the bar. So the condition has been amended and the report amended to refer to the opening hours of the club from 9 till 11, Monday to Sunday. And the music is not permitted to be played on the community hub club premises after 10 o'clock, Monday to Thursday and Sunday, and 10:30 on a Friday, Saturday and bank holiday. So that's the amendment to the condition. So since the submission of the report, we've also received late representation from neighbours, which has been summarised there. So they raised noise and social behaviour, litter, overlooking, membership, overdevelopment, parking, drainage and light pollution in their comments. These points have been previously addressed in the report, and I've taken a few key points out of the report there. So in terms of the overlooking, residential properties on Oaklands approximately 40 metres away to the properties on Station Road 49, and properties on Cullion Road approximately 39 metres. We consulted environmental health and highways on the application, and we also consulted environmental health on the amended condition and times, and there was no objections to those times. We also discussed licensing with the licensing team, and the Licensing Act allows for the review of the premises where the provision of licensable activities is undermining one or more of the statutory licensing objectives. So prevention of crime, disorder, public safety, and the prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. They're the options the premises can be reviewed on. So that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Simon. We have third-party speakers for this application. I would like to invite the first of the third-party speakers, Mrs. Gay Reynolds, to address the committee. Mrs. Reynolds, you have 5 minutes to speak, and you will be timed by Chris.
Members, just to make you aware that Mr and Mrs Reynolds both have asked for slides to be shown during their presentation, so I'll be doing that from my computer.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Good morning, all. I've got a script, so I can, because I know I've only got 5 minutes, so I'll just crack on. I'm speaking on behalf of the 9 households that border the recreational field to provide more detail to the objections, as the report does not fully reflect them. The community has been well served by the current facilities, and we, as residents that border the field, have supported the club in some cases for many decades. It is, however, recognised that the current cricket club does need to be improved. The objection is, however, to a 2-storey events venue with balcony and the impacts this will have on residents that border the recreational field due to noise and antisocial behaviour. The PSCC, referred to from here on as the club, aim to increase participation in sport, particularly amongst girls and youth, is to be praised, and this will be enhanced by the proposed plan to increase the changing room provision. However, the proposed new 2-storey development of 2 new events rooms, 2 bars for third-party functions and weddings with capacity for 166 people, not including the outside events area and stage, will do nothing to further these aims and is an overdevelopment of facilities. Over the last 2 years, the club has gradually changed the sphere of activity from solely sports to a heavily promoted members-only social club. As a consequence, the club has upscaled its licensing opening times to the point that it is now open 7 days a week to 11 o'clock. This has resulted in a dramatic increase in members drinking and social culture 7 days a week instead of just weekends and the odd event. The current clubhouse and its bar is regularly used by its members and attracts crowds of people who spill out onto the surrounding area, drinking well into the evening, creating noise that carries across to our properties. This has resulted in residents that border the recreation field being unable to have quiet enjoyment of their property inside and out as a result of unacceptable levels of noise and antisocial behaviour. Moreover, closing the windows has not managed to block out this noise nuisance. This has heavily impacted on our right to an uninterrupted and quiet enjoyment of our homes and gardens. This has given rise to a number of complaints by residents, 6 by myself over a 10-month period, being submitted to the club directors due to extremely loud music still playing after 11 p.m. and revellers still drinking outside on the patio area. Recordings of the events of the 6th of April and 7th of May have been submitted for your consideration. In evidence of this, following a complaint about noise on the 6th of April this year, the premises was eventually cleared after midnight. Historically, we have tried to engage with the club directly. However, following the event on the 7th of May, complaints have been raised with Torvine Housing Safety and Environmental Protection. The stated aims of directors and board is to maximise the events calendar and achieve maximum income generation. This is evidenced by 2 parties that are booked for the 17th of June for 100 people from 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock and the 24th of June for 80 people from 5:30 to 11 o'clock. No consideration has been given to the impact on residents that border the recreational field on having 2 parties on consecutive weeks. Events will only increase if approval is given for the 2-storey events venue as borne out by the stated aims of the directors to achieve maximum usage and income generation. If approved, the noise of crowds and amplified music will inevitably increase beyond what is currently endured by residents due to the foreseeable increase in events and capacity, as the scale of users will be upwards of 166 and greater if the outside events area and stage is also utilised. Furthermore, the double events venue with balcony will emit sound from a higher topography, resulting in noise levels travelling further, therefore impacting further on residents which borders the recreational field, particularly as Station Road properties are situated lower than the proposed new development venue. Based on the stated aims of the club board and the noise nuisance endured to date, along with the complaints submitted to the club, it is foreseeable that the noise nuisance will be further exacerbated with a 2-storey events venue and balcony. I believe if a nuisance is foreseeable, the council is legally obliged to prevent it under the Environmental Protection Act 1990, as it has been brought to the council's attention. If, as stated by the club, this is truly about increasing sport within the community, particularly in light of the public health concerns regarding obesity and alcohol abuse, why is a new development of 2-storey events facility with 2 bars open 7 days a week until 11 required? The residents on Station Road,
Mrs. Gay.
The residents on Station Road that border the recreational field have a busy train track to the front of their properties and also have to contend with almost daily grounds maintenance of their recreational
Mrs.
field.
Reynolds, Chris has told you 5 minutes is up.
No, sorry, Chair.
I have to stop you there.
Apologies, Chair. No, I was giving Mrs. Gay 30 seconds.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear that. We'll go back then.
Sorry, yeah.
Chris.
Yeah, that's fine.
We contend with almost daily ground maintenance of the recreational field. We are therefore more tolerant than most people to noise. However, the proposed new overdevelopment, if approved, may change the recreational field from a residential amenity enjoyed by residents of Pontier to a party venue, as is already occurring on a regular basis. As a compromise, a conventional single-storey housing club and changing room was put forward within our objections. We therefore ask why this is not an option. Moreover, the building would not directly overlook our properties from a higher level if it's located when the current club is situated.
Time, Chair.
It's me done, is it? Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mrs. Reynolds. Sorry about the mix-up. Right, I would like to invite the second speaker, Mr. David Reynolds. Mr. Reynolds, you have 5 minutes to address the committee and you will be timed by Chris.
Good morning. The proposed development will have a negative impact on this quintessentially British ideal of a recreational area and village green that is widely used by the village community. The consequential increase in traffic will also compromise the safe route to school for children. The Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act 2015 states there is an obligation to ensure that children are safe and feel safe in the place that they live and learn. All residents on Station Road that border the recreation field, 9 homes, have collectively and individually objected to these proposals as set out within the planning report, as they will be directly and severely impacted by the new events venue building, along with other residents that border the proposed planning site. I'm therefore speaking on behalf of the 9 residents, 28 people, including 8 school-aged children of Station Road that border the recreation field. The sports field has been used for recreational use for the locals and residents in Pontier for many decades, for all types of activities and in the heart of the village living. The proposed building would be a blatant invasion of privacy imposed on local residents that border the recreational ground. The Assistant Planning Officer report states that these residents are within 50 metres of the new proposed development. The substantial number of people who may use the proposed 2-storey events venue, looking out from the large first floor windows and the balcony areas, will have plain sight of our gardens, habitable rooms, for example, bedrooms, bathrooms and gardens of the residents on Station Road that border the field, resulting in a loss of privacy and the enjoyment of individual safe spaces, as it will directly overlook our properties. The Assistant Planning Officer states in his recommendation, residential amenity, page 33, that given the distance to the properties, the existing buildings, topography and planting and car park of the new pavilion, whilst on 2 storeys, are not considered to result in any significant detrimental impact upon the amenities and living conditions of neighbouring occupiers. The properties on Station Road that border the recreation field already sit at a lower level than the existing clubhouse buildings. The proposed 2-storey events venue will also be elevated, and our objections and concerns have been well documented with the planning department. There's been an increase in the standing water on the recreational field since the drainage was installed in 21-22. This has resulted in the storm drain, which runs parallel to the properties on Station Road that border the recreational field, reaching capacity on a number of occasions. This has not. This has not occurred for over 30 years. Photos have been supplied to the Assistant Planning Officer in support of this. We are advised at the public consultation meeting on the 11th of April that a SUDS application had been submitted, but note that the Planning Committee report that this is still outstanding. We request that the permission is suspended until such time as the SUDS certification has been obtained. As a consequence of existing development of the PSCC, is the increased usage of the recreational space for sporting activities. This has led to an increase in the number of cars within the village, which has approximately 1,480 residents. This has resulted in overspill into residential areas and the blocking of driveways. Pavements may also restrict and delay pavement parking, may also restrict and delay emergency service vehicles from the Grange Hospital and other blue light responses. It should be noted that there have been road traffic facilities in the village in recent years. Therefore, the risk of further fatalities is further increased if the new development is permitted. Furthermore, the late amendment of the plans, the car park now traverses past the cricket nets from the back of the facility towards the sports field and through the run-up area of the cricket nets. That it's an obvious health and safety hazard to cricketers using the nets and the drivers and vehicles trying to park in their area. Contrary to the Assistant Planning Officer's report, the 2 nearest buildings to the proposed new events venue are single-storey school and a single-storey nursery, and other buildings on the peripheries of the recreation field are private dwellings.
30 seconds.
This new development will be visually and aesthetically sympathetic to existing structures. Your landscape officer put the matter succinctly and sensibly in his planning report, and his recommendations on solutions should be considered as a way forward. He says the proposal of a 2-storey building of contemporary design and materials will have a significant visual impact on local residents and users of the public right-of-way and school close. The current development presents a low-level single-storey building which is keeping...
That's time, Chair.
Okay. Thank you.
Apologies, Chair, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Norman. Norman, you're still on mute.
Thank you. Niall, could you tell me what's happening? Mr. Parfitt is going to speak. Is he? Oh, I can see him going into his chair now. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. My name is John Parfitt. I'm the Secretary of Pontier Sports and Community Club. Chair, you've heard a lot from the objectors about the noise and disturbance that is claimed to exist in the area. It would be foolish of me to sit here and claim that the club has never caused any disturbance to any of our neighbours. We have, very occasionally, but I suspect if every other licensee of every other licensed premises in the borough was to sit here and be honest, they would say that occasionally they have that problem as well. It's very difficult to review. What your records will show, and by your records I mean the records of your Environmental Health and Licensing Department, is that the complaints that you have received have strangely occurred since it was known that we were proposing to put the planning application in and that a new club housing community hub was being proposed. On the odd occasion, and I stress odd occasions, when we receive a complaint, we don't ignore them and we investigate them and take action to try to ensure no repetition. We are not the only licensed premises in the vicinity, and there are footpaths leading from that into local estates, and there are times when we are closed, but there's still some antisocial behaviour or somebody carousing on their way back from the other premises, but we get the calls or we get the blame. But we are proactive. We have a good neighbour policy. We have good neighbour meetings to support that policy. We seek prior agreements with local neighbours regarding times and operation of events. We issue advisory leaflets prior to events explaining what's going on, what time it starts, what time it will be finishing, and there's a duty director and a dedicated phone line, whether that's an event in the club or the odd events that we run outdoors. And we do all of that not because we are a major source of noise and disturbance, but rather because we don't want to become one. Our proposals, for the new clubhouse, etc., have received overwhelming community support. If you look at the ratio of supportive letters compared to objections, the ratio is something like 5-1. The public meeting that we held, your report says we made no effort to consult the wider community. Not true, sir. Not true, madam. Councillor Gordon, our ward councillor, would be able to provide you with copies of the documentation that was published. It went out on social media. The Pontier Community Council published it, and we ended up with a meeting in Pontier Village Hall with approximately 60 people attended, which I think by any measure is a good attempt. It was well attended and well supported. And therefore we were amazed and confounded at the report. The 4 conditions relating to permitted hours and so on. With respect, these are licensing matters, and they are matters better dealt with under the licensing regime than they are under the rather cumbersome planning conditions. Pardon me. And why condition 20? 2 years ago, you gave us permission to erect a canopy. There was no adverse visual impact identified then, and yet now, 2 years later, it's a condition of giving us, if you do give us permission, that we have to take this down. There's no justification for that. And actually, there's a justification for keeping it because your own council's public health policies encourage the provision of shade in areas where the public gather.
30 seconds.
Our proposal will bring over £1 million worth of investment into Pontier. It will help the council deliver a number of key strategies. It's health and well-being strategy, sports and leisure, and public health, to say but a few. We are not oblivious to the potential for doers. We completely reject the argument for overlooking. If you looked at particularly the objectives houses...
Apologies, that's time, Chair.
Thank you, Mr Parfitt. Right, I can't see any hands up for questions. Are there any members in the chamber who would like to ask a question?
Yes, Chair, we have Councillor Williams and Councillor Gordon.
Right. Councillor Williams, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you very much, Chair. First, can I say thank you to those members of the public who came in to give additional information. It was very helpful, and I know that's not an easy thing to do, so thank you very much. A couple of things that I picked up on. One was that there's a reference, and there was a mention made about the Sustainable Urban Drainage Scheme, and at the bottom of page 34 it talks about this element would be conditioned out of any permission. And I can understand some of the concerns that were raised around flooding, so I'd like to understand that better. That's the first point. Secondly, there also seemed to be some mention of potential impact with sewage and the need to engage with Welsh Water, but I didn't see that there'd been any evidence of that. So again, that relating to the water side of things. And my third point, I guess, would be, given some of the points that have been made and the mitigations that have been put in place, whether there could not be some greater consideration to screening the station road boundary through planting regime, etc. I would also note that quite a few of the points that have been raised really seem to relate much more to licensing and enforcement rather than to the planning application, and I can see that the ecology mitigation, etc., seems to be well addressed, and this does seem positive in the light of what the council has agreed around supplementary planning guidance around green infrastructure, etc. So a couple of points, if I may there, Chair.
Thank you. Simon, could you answer these questions, please?
Yeah, and I'll just come back on a couple of points raised previously as well. So I think there was a couple of concerns raised regarding highway safety. So throughout the planning process, we consult highways, and there's been a number of amendments to the plans. And highways have no objections to the latest amendment, and requested conditions, and we've conditioned a car park management plan and other details to come forward. So I think that's important to note. With regards to drainage and the SUDS, I think was mentioned, that's separate legislation, so that wouldn't come before, didn't necessarily have to come before a planning application. So that'd be separate legislation. I think the condition you're referring to in terms of the removal of the surface water lagoons, that would relate to, again, the SUDS application. So that would require a SUDS application for the drainage. So that's why that's conditioned out. I think then Tony made reference, or Tony Parfitt made reference to the hours of condition 14 and 19. Again, that's been amended as in my presentation. There was also mention of condition 20 and the shelter being removed. Again, we've put that condition on because of a reference to a drawing which referred to that being removed. That's why the condition's on, but we're happy to revisit that if required. And then in terms of the screening, sorry, the second point, in terms of screening, we've considered that in our report, and we feel there's sufficient distance to the various properties around the proposal, that's not required. So hence why we've not put a condition on. We have conditioned a landscaping plan and management of that with regards to the planting they're proposing. I think that's it in terms of your points.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Gordon, would you like to ask your questions?
Chair, I have several, so I'd like to ask them sort of piecemeal, if I may, rather than sort of too much confusion. As I stated,
yes, that's fine. That's fine.
Thank you. I stated at the outset I'm the ward member for Llanfrecfr and Pontier, so I have sort of been across this planning application for a number of months. I would agree with Mr Parfitt about the consultation, and it's mentioned in the report that there's been little or no consultation with residents. I'm happy to sit here and completely refute that. I've consulted with the club. I held a meeting with 15 or 16 residents who were objecting to the proposals, and there has been public meetings, as Mr Parfitt mentioned, in Village Hall with 50, 60 attendees to go through the plans for the club. So this has not been done in a vacuum. The club have been very open about their plans for some time. So I'd like that sort of noted, if you like. It's in the report, but it's to me, that doesn't ring true with the reality on the ground. Now, I'm pleased to see that we've dealt with recommendations 14 and 19 by the adjustment to hours. My question is, just on that, and I'll come back and revisit some of the other stuff if I may. My question on that is that appropriate to be included in a planning report anyway? Is it not, as others have mentioned, a matter for licensing? And are we in danger of sort of hamstringing this planning application based on licensing hours? And I'll expand more on that after, if I may.
Thank you for that. So I think referring to your first point, in terms of no consultation with residents, that's come from an objection. So that's come from neighbours commenting on the planning application rather than from the local authority. So that's just been summarised in the public representations. In terms of the condition relating to the club opening hours, in the design and access statement, the club opening hours originally it detailed those times, so we conditioned that. On discussions with the applicant, that they said that was incorrect and should have related to the bar. So in conversation with the applicants, we've amended the opening hours to relate to the opening hours they intend, hence the condition change and that condition on the application related to the opening hours.
Chair, I have a follow-up on that, if I may. Yeah.
Yes.
Conditions 14, 18 and 19 are claimed to be necessary to protect the amenity of nearby residential properties. Okay? Yet, the residential amenity section of the report states, and I quote, given the distances to the properties, the existing buildings, topography and planting, the car park and new pavilion, whilst a two-storey, not considered to result in any significant detrimental impact upon the amenities and living conditions of neighbouring occupiers. Comments relating to noise and being overlooked have been considered. However, in addition to the above, environmental health were consulted on the application and did not object to the proposal. It's also worth noting that should noise be an issue, there are other powers available to the relevant authorities should further action needs to be taken. And this is in the planning report. With regards to a premises licence, this would be a separate application. However, it's relevant to note when an application for a premises licence is received, the applicant needs to specify the opening hours and what licensable activities are intended to be conducted during opening hours. This goes out for consultation to all interested parties and gives the opportunity for them to object if they so wish. Once the licence has been granted and is in place, the Licensing Act 2003 gives power to local residents, as well as the responsible authorities such as the police, environmental, health and trading standards, to apply for the review of the premises where the provision of licensable activities is undermining one or more of the statutory licensing objectives. That's in the report. So I'm then surprised by recommendations 14, 18 and 19. I consider this just purely a matter for licensing. And I'm really, really sympathetic to Mr and Mrs Reynolds and their neighbours who have raised objections about noise and all the rest of it. So I'd like that addressed. I would like also a response to Mr Parfitt's comments on the canopy and section 20. If I just conclude with my sort of, hopefully last statement, if you like. I get both sides of this argument. I really do. That's why I've consulted as widely as I can and held meetings with the club and objectors to this proposal. Anecdotally, I was at the club on Tuesday, the 13th, where we had an event there. We were visited by a guy called Noel Mooney, Chief Executive of the Football Association of Wales. So quite a dignitary to open one of the new sports field. The club have really ambitious plans in terms of the sporting activities they want to carry on there. They are attracting women and young girls football teams. This is in line with every health, well-being agenda this council has. Right? I know the residents who are objecting are not objecting to the sporting activities. They're worried about extraneous noise and sort of antisocial behaviour. That needs to be monitored, and that is a licensing matter and an environmental health matter, and that can be dealt with by other means rather than throwing the baby out the bathwater on this planning application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. Simon, can you answer those questions, please?
Chair, could I come in there if I can?
Yes, yes.
It's a confusing picture with different regulatory bodies, but just in terms of what we do, the planning guidance and planning policy very much looks at public amenity and has certain levels of public amenity that we have to look after. We are very entitled through all our guidance that we have. In fact, the standard conditions that the Inspectorate and Welsh Government advise planning authorities to consider in circumstances like this. So we've done that in relation to the planning policy guidance. Fully accept that there's a licensing regime outside of planning. That's more to do with alcohol licensing. Planning is not just the alcohol, it deals with the whole use of the... So, for example, if there was no alcohol served there, then they possibly wouldn't need a licence, but planning would still have to put sort of certain operational hours on there to safeguard residential amenity. And our bar may be slightly different to what the licensing bar would be, but we are still entitled to do that. The public health legislation, then, which is the third area, tends to deal with after the event. So something has happened, there's a complaint, and then they deal with that after the event. Whereas the planning conditions are there to try and prevent that from happening in the first place. That does mean, actually, that if there's an event happening at 10 o'clock that complies with the planning conditions, that still may cause a nuisance under public health legislation, and public health can still intervene independent of the planning conditions. So they should all reasonably work together, but that's the reason I think that we are looking at public amenity. The only other thing I would say in terms of the hours of operation conditions, the applicant did approach us and say the condition that we had put on there originally and what's in front of you on the report wouldn't work for them. They wanted a daytime activity. We had repeated that condition because it was already in the submission they had made, recognised that there was an issue and was happy to widen the scope of that to give an all-day use. The two conditions in question there, we agreed that with the applicant. So as far as I can tell, the applicant was in agreement with that new condition that we put on the screen. The canopy, again, was going along with the plans. The plans showed that being removed. We put that condition on there. I think that if the applicant is looking to retain that, it wasn't part of the proposal, but there are certain permitted development rights for temporary structures like that. Now, what I'm prepared to do, if committee allow and if committee were minded to approve, that we will relook at that condition, maybe discuss that with the applicant, because there's certain things he's going to be able to do without planning permission anyway, and we may vary that condition or remove it as a result of those talks, as long as we feel that the amenity aspects are not compromised.
Chair, if you indulge me, I've got one more comment, observation, question to make.
Yes.
Then I will.
Yes, you can go ahead.
I will be quiet after that. I've picked up, just in the course of our discussion here, something rather counterintuitive. You talk about public amenity and noise and nuisance and all the rest of it, but Simon has said during the course of his contribution to this meeting that we looked at screening for the neighbouring properties, but that wasn't considered appropriate or necessary because of the distance from the proposed development. That seems rather counterintuitive to me. If we're talking about public amenity and there's a problem, but you're also saying there's sufficient distance away to negate that requirement, which seems, as I say, counterintuitive to me. We've either got a problem or we've not. What I would say is, having sort of talked over complaints received by the club with the club, because I'm keen to sort of ensure that they deal with those complaints in a sort of professional, expedient fashion, they do. And if there was anything that they could do to sort of, alongside the good work they're already doing with the sort of neighbouring residents, if there was a further hurdle to jump, I know they would, within sort of financial and logistical reason. Thank you.
Chair, if I could just come in on that one.
Yes, Richard.
I think maybe we're talking at cross purposes, because the screening element was to do with privacy, overlooking from the balcony area, and we are saying that we deal with that all the time in extensions and all sorts of situations, and 39 metres was the minimum distance, and we felt for privacy purposes that was sufficient. Screening in terms of landscaping don't really do anything in terms of noise. So if you were going to try and reduce the noise, you'd have to put up a huge barrier that was soundproof, which isn't appropriate here, which is why the conditions are there trying to limit noise. There will be noise, and it does travel distances, but we're trying to protect that in the more sensitive hours, I suppose, that noise doesn't continue into the evening. Is that okay? Is that? Yeah.
Right, thank you. Councillor Evans, you've got a question?
Yeah, well, and a bit of a statement. I applaud the club and the residents, discussing the problems and the issues regarding this. So that is a positive. The question now, from my planning perspective, with the revised parking, is there sufficient room for emergency vehicles to get in and out? That's my biggest concern, particularly with the sports and with the club situation.
Right, thank you. Would one of you like to answer that?
Yes, thanks, Chair. So if I can just come in there. So as part of the conditions, we've requested a car park management plan for events. We also consulted Highways on the proposals and the amended plans, and they were satisfied with the plans from a Highways perspective. But again, we've got a condition on there relating to car park management, and particularly the management of events, whether you'd expect to see more cars.
Is that okay? Councillor Evans?
Yeah, my concern is more about when there's a lot of cars there, that is access, to get near the field or whatever, particularly if it was an ambulance or a fire tender or something like that, could actually get where it needs to get and not be blocked off by even the parking of cars.
Could you answer that, Simon?
Yeah, so I think with this planning application, they're trying to formalise the parking. And I think with the car park management plan, it will have details regarding events and how emergency vehicles will be able to access the facilities if needed.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come in? I appreciate what Councillor Evans is saying, and you can never stop cars from parking indiscriminately out of spaces and whatnot. But as Simon is saying, the car parking management plan is something that the club will be required to put together to make sure that when that does happen, it's spotted and dealt with as quickly as possible to maintain that throughput for emergency vehicles and delivery vehicles, in fact.
Right, thank you. Chris, there's someone in the chamber wishing to ask a question.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Janet Jones.
Right. Councillor Jones, would you like to ask a question?
Thanks, Chair. It's been really difficult this morning because I've been told to listen, is it more of a licensing issue? So I'm going to ask a question based on the planning issues. On page 34, it says a management strategy will clearly set out what actions and measures will be put in place. I can't see that unless I've mislaid it under the recommendations. It says the management strategy set out what actions to ensure the use of the site for sports, etc. But I've looked under the recommendations, and unless I've missed it, I can't see that condition.
Right. Could you answer that, please, for Councillor Jones?
Sorry, we're just trying to find it in the report at the moment.
It's on page 34, Simon. Wrap down.
I think there's two management conditions on you. The one referring to the management of the car park and one referring to the management of the landscaping and maintenance of the grounds and whatnot. There isn't anything in relation to how the club is going to run its activities, because that's not really for planning to intervene in. Yes, apologies if that's misleading, but it was only car park management and the management of the landscaping.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Simon, for clarification.
Thank you. Right, I don't see anyone else.
Apologies, Chair. We've got Councillor David Williams.
Oh, right. Councillor Williams, go ahead, please.
Sorry to come in again, but one of the points I think that's been mentioned in terms of something that we've heard and that does occur to me as well is that the impact potentially of additional light pollution with a taller building. And I mention this because it's something that's come up in my own area as well in terms of housing being affected by light. So I just wondered if there'd been any consideration of that, and that was partly the reason for me making the point about screening, not for noise, but for actually light as much as noise.
Thank you. Are you going to answer it? Oh, go on, Simon, go ahead.
Yeah, so we consulted Environmental Health on the application, and again, they didn't have any objections to the proposals, and with that in mind.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'll just add, I don't think this is an unusual amount of lighting. It's a normal sort of clubhouse with normal sort of lighting. We're not anticipating any further lighting that's going to impact on residential properties in terms of glare, which is what I think you're probably getting at.
Right, thank you. Right, there are no more questions. Could a member propose or move a proposal, please?
Sorry, Chair. Pardon me, just to come in, just to clarify that there's been talk about the condition relating to the canopy, and we've said that we're happy to engage with the applicant on that in terms of permitted development rights. So just if members could, if they are minded to approve, just to be clear that we get a remit to do that or not, as the case may be.
Right, thank you. Right, all members heard that. So I'll ask again, is there a member ready to move a proposal?
I'll move it, Chair.
Right, thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Evans, you seconded it. I couldn't. Yeah, thank you. Right. Chris, could you please ask members in alphabetical order to state whether they are for, against or are abstaining?
No problem, Chair.
Thank
So
you.
we'll start with Councillor Best.
For. Excuse me.
Sorry, was that for? Sorry, Councillor Best.
Councillor.
Sorry, for.
Thank you. Councillor Evans?
For.
Councillor Gordon?
For.
Councillor Horler?
For.
Councillor Gaynor-James?
For.
Councillor John James?
For.
Councillor Janet Jones?
For with conditions.
Councillor Parish?
For.
Councillor Slade?
For.
Councillor Williams?
Abstain.
That's majority
Right.
for, Chair.
Yes, so that's 9 for 1 abstention. So this planning application has been approved. Right, we'll move on to the next one. Agenda item 5, planning application 23/P/0321/PNT. Proposed telecommunications installation, proposed 15-metre phase 8 monopole and associated ancillary works, and this is linked to application to 23/P/0236 PNT. Right, can I ask Mia McAndrew, Senior Planner, to present the report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And so, as the Chair said, this is a prior approval application for a 5G mast and ancillary works on Lanfrecffer Way in Llanarafon. Application 23P/0236 in PNT, which is in the end of the description, determined that prior approval was required for this proposal, and then this application is considering whether prior approval should be granted. The nature of a prior approval application is that the local authority gets 56 days to make a decision. If we don't make a decision within that period, then the development is permitted and can begin. And the considerations for prior approval applications are also limited, and we can only assess the development based on its siting and appearance. Here's a map that shows the site and local area. So the development's proposed approximately by here, if you can see my mouse, yeah. So it's adjacent to a existing lay-by on Lanfrecffer Way, and it's to the southeast of Llanarafon Manor, which is I think is approximately 115 metres away. And it's also adjacent to properties on Langall's Path. I think it's number 1 that's adjacent to it. That is about 40 metres away. Yes, about 40 metres away. And you can also see that it is to the north of this access, which provides access to a car park that serves, that gives access to a golf club, and also Llanarafon Manor there to the north. Here's a plan of the site as existing. So it's proposed on this grassed verge on the western side of Lanfrecffer Way. There's a footpath to the west of that, and then a hedgerow. There are trees nearby. And here's an existing elevation drawing. So you can see there's quite a flat site, and you can see the hedgerow, and you can see the tree line there. And you can also see an existing lamppost, which is 8 metres high. And the trees vary, but the nearest one is approximately 15 metres tall. Here. Here's some photos of the site as existing. You can see the tree line and the lamppost and the lay-by. And here are some photos of the site, but showing the street in both directions. So this is, the top one is looking down towards the south, and you can see the line of lampposts and trees on the western side of the road. And then on the bottom photo, it's then looking towards the north, which is towards the shops in Llanarafon and the Crow's Nest. There is a bit of history on this site, not the exact location that's proposed, but the applicant's been trying to propose a 5G mast in this location has dotted it around in various spots nearby. So this was the first one that we received. This proposed an 18-metre tall mast, and it was further south of the proposal. You can see here's the crossing that's just north of the access to the car park. This was refused because it was within the visibility display from the junction, and it was considered that the 18-metre tall mast would harm the street scene, and the combined impact of both of those was not considered acceptable. Following that refusal, a new proposal was submitted, and to address the highways and visual impacts, the height was reduced to 15 metres, and it was set back further from the street out of the visibility display. But that meant that it was within the root protection zone of a tree, which isn't protected, but it is a mature tree that has visual qualities, and it was refused on the basis that any harm to the tree would have subsequent visual and biodiversity impacts. This refusal was appealed, and the inspector upheld our decision. And in this appeal decision, the inspector did recognise that the proposal would be seen in the wider context of the hedgerow and trees along Llanfrecffer Way and other linear features, including street lighting. And there were no council objections to the proposal on highway safety grounds, and they didn't disagree with these findings. Their refusal, or their decision, was based on the visual and biodiversity impacts from the loss of the tree rather than the mast itself. We received another application for the proposal where they stepped it away from the tree, but this was back into the visibility display that was previously refused, and we considered that the visual impact of having a mast on the streets coupled with highways impact was not acceptable. We've had this new application, and with this we've had a document submitted which explains the need for the proposed development and also explains other sites considered. So there's the sites that we've just gone through that have been refused and we've not considered suitable. This red point here that says proposed location is the one that we're considering under this application, and the other red points show other locations considered by the applicant in the local area. They were not considered acceptable for varying reasons such as the visual and highways impacts. The nature of 5G masts is limited range, so we've queried whether they could provide a mast further out of the residential area away from residential properties, but that wouldn't give the coverage required for these improved mobile infrastructure. So this is the proposed development. You can see this circle is about 40 centimetres in diameter, in the centre of the verge. That is the mast. They've removed the wraparound cabinet at the base of the mast to try and reduce the bulk of it. And to the north of the mast there's 3 cabinets, and then to the west of those there's 10 paving slabs between those and the footpath. And you can also see it's been moved to the north out of the visibility display, and it's also been moved away from the trees. And you can see here, this is the existing lamppost, which is 8 metres tall compared to the proposed 15 metres. And here's an elevation drawing. You can see where they've reduced the bulk at the base here, and you can see where it'd be a similar height to neighbouring trees. The trees provide a bit of a backdrop to the proposal. And that's all for the proposal. Since the report was published, we've had comments from the tree officer, and they have confirmed that there would be a negligible impact upon the trees because it's been set away. It's unlikely that it would harm the hedgerow because it'd be separated by a path, but we are going to condition or add a condition for a construction method statement just to make sure that the hedge is protected. In conclusion, national planning policies such as Future Wales and Planning Policy Wales 11 really encourage improved mobile infrastructure. They have recognised that 5G infrastructure has limited range and will require smaller sites on more residential areas, and said that the planning authority should encourage such development because of its benefits, social and economic benefits. And as we've mentioned before, the inspector acknowledged that the provision of a 15-metre tall mast with the backdrop trees and in line with the lampposts didn't have a significant visual impact. It is considered in this impact that the visual impact is outweighed by the need for the proposed development, and the applicants also demonstrated why the site has been chosen because of the limited range. It's therefore considered that prior approval should be granted in this instance.
Thank you, Mia. Chris, I can't see any hands up. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to ask a question?
Yes, Chair. Councillor David Williams.
Yes, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. You'll see in that my comments as ward member have been included within the report. I will read them because, again, I think it's important to be a matter of record. There were some concerns, as I say, from people around this site, and you'll have seen some of the resident objections. There was concern, as I say, in terms of a test dig and where this was put, which didn't go in the right place, which did rather cast some doubt on the confidence and competence, perhaps, of the applicant in going forward. And there's also my point that similar applications being put forward previously, and why have not applicants looked to take account of the previous feedback and look to consider alternative siting. Information has subsequently been received, as has been set out, but not necessarily the rationale for why those particular alternative sites were not considered. So to my mind, whilst recognising the inexorable march of progress in the 21st century, which means that we need mobile phone masts, I do question the level of engagement and the democratic process that has taken place in relation to the siting of this mast. I'm grateful for the provision from the planning team of the Mobile Operators Code of Best Practice, and it says here, they set out an engagement framework for mobile network operators and LPAs when considering applications for prior approval, seeking to avoid areas of conflict and minimise perceived adverse impacts of telecoms equipment, and supporting a more collaborative approach to deploying and improving digital connectivity through Wales. My own view is that through some decent on-the-ground engagement in terms of the fine-tuning of siting of such as this, many of the concerns can be addressed and mitigated. The failure of the applicant to actually do this, I don't think is helpful. I would add that with the previous application, having been notified in due course and having an address to write to, I did, seeking the opportunity to get further information, and I had no reply. So my concerns predominantly are around process, not the fact that there's a need for such provision, but actually due process would mean that these things can be far less contentious, and I would like to make that point very strongly.
Right, thank you. Mia?
Sorry, Chair, if I can come in there.
Yes.
There is a code of practice, and the telecoms operators have signed up to that code of practice, but it is for them to do. There's a legislative framework whereby planning process has to take place in terms of dealing with prior approval of these masts. So the legislative process, with us consulting, us dealing with it as process, has been done satisfactorily in accordance with legislation. The code of practice is for the telecoms operators. Now, if they haven't engaged as much as you think they should have engaged, then that's not something that I'd be very happy with, but it doesn't really prejudice us making a recommendation for approval. What I would say is that I think Mia put a plan up showing a number of 8 or 9 positions that they had looked at. They are bound by signal as well, so it should be in a certain parameters of whatever. I'm not an expert on any of that, but we're not allowed to question the need. They're saying there's a need for one in this area. A lot of the other locations was much nearer residential properties, which I think is why they went on to the other side of the road. Acknowledge it's a very leafy area. It's a lovely sort of drive down. There has been a number of applications previously. They've reduced the height of it. reduced the bulkiness of it, taken out of all the visibility splays. They don't look particularly good in the street scene, but we are seeing more and more of them. And I think just taking a balance of all of that, we think that they've probably nailed the only suitable position that they could have got from our point of view. And we feel on that basis that it's acceptable. We're very conscious of the appeal decision where the inspector refused it, but on the grounds it affected a tree, and the loss of that tree ultimately would have been detrimental to the street scene, but he didn't comment on the actual appearance of the mast itself, meaning that once they've resolved that problem, from our point of view, there was very little else to resolve. However, having said all of that, if members felt that appearance-wise this was unacceptable in that position, that's what members need to decide, really. But that's process-wise, I would agree with you, Councillor, that's not something that we would have wanted.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Well, if there aren't, can I ask a member to move a proposal, please?
I'll move it, Chair.
Thank you. Right, is there a second?
I'll second it, Chair.
Thank you. Right, Chris, could you please ask members in alphabetical order to state whether they are for, against or are abstaining? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Best? I think he's dropped off, Chair. Councillor,
right.
Councillor Evans? Or Councillor Gordon? Or Councillor Haller?
For.
Councillor Councillor Gaynor James?
For.
Councillor John James?
For.
Councillor Jones?
Abstain.
Councillor Parish?
For.
Councillor Slade?
For.
Councillor Williams?
Against.
That's a majority for, Chair.
Yes, thank you. So there are 7 for, 1 against and 1 abstaining. So this application has been approved. Thank you. Right, that's the end of the agenda today. Thank you everyone for your attendance and contributions, and I'll now close the meeting.